I'm often thinking about how to explain the petrodollar, and it's so difficult. And then I think, well, maybe don't try and explain the petrodollar, try and explain why it's so difficult to explain the petrodollar. So in this video, I'll touch upon that, why it's so difficult to explain the petrodollar. And what I'm going to look at is something that's part of the petrodollar, which is the network effect. So I'm walking through Arlington here, and it's a fairly wealthy community, because just to that way is Cambridge, Harvard, MIT. So let's even just talk about Cambridge. How did Cambridge become so wealthy? Well, obviously because many people want to live there. It's the same homes as maybe 30 minutes out in in Massachusetts. So, but why it? Why not other places? Well, everybody wants to be there because of Harvard and MIT, right? Now, did Harvard or MIT set up shop in Cambridge because they wanted a network effect? They wanted to build a wealthy community? No. They put the colleges there because it was basically nothing there in that time, in the 1600s. You know, what commercial industry there was, in a sense, was in Boston, or what trade or whatever. So Boston was everything out, and Harvard was out in the boondocks. MIT too. Anyway, they were started for reasons to do education for the wealthy or whatever back then. And then these communities became very wealthy because people wanted to be there. The network effect. You can't pin your finger on it, and it wasn't set up with the desire to be a network effect or a collection of wealth. It just happened. And it's the same thing with the petrodollar. The impetus behind the petrodollar, while they were going for it, wasn't an idea to make the dollar more valuable than other currencies, or to make it a reserve currency. It was because at that time the people who wanted to, they needed to find a way to make to have the dollar back something that was more growth oriented instead of gold, which is limited. And they also they recognized that oil is very important, and they wanted to sort of keep a little bit of control on it. They wanted to make money while it's the financialization of oil. So in a sense, the people who came up with the petrodollar, again, they weren't thinking, oh, I want to make a petrodollar so all Americans can sort of benefit from lower borrowing costs. They were thinking more like they're going to do the investment banking for and make money. But it was a side effect that all of us Americans are wealthier because everybody in the world needs dollars to buy oil, petrodollar. And it's the same thing with the network effect. So, if you bought a house in Cambridge or Arlington or any of these areas in the past 50 years, you're doing well from the network effect of people wanting to be close to Harvard and MIT, and then all the tech companies that grew up around them, the pharma industry and whatever, right? But again, none of that was done as a purpose of making these places wealthy. And that's why it's difficult to explain the petrodollar, because it isn't a mechanism that was created specifically to make dollars valuable, nor a community valuable. It was a side effect. So when you explain petrodollars, or when I'm trying to explain it, you're reading about a side effect. And so when people say, oh, well, the petrodollar is toast, I would say, it doesn't mean anything to people because they don't see it. It's a second order type thing. It's like the air. It just happens. Nobody really understands why it happened. It is. And to understand why it happens, well, then you need to get into all this history and depth and various agendas over time and how they made for this. But you can't get into it directly. You cannot talk about the petrodollar directly because it isn't, again, a mechanism. It is an attribute. That's the wrong word for it. It's a thing that grows out of the financial and commercial interests of the 1970s. And it's the same thing for why property is valuable here. So I think that's it for today's video. I'm going to keep coming back to this subject. Hope you got something out of it. Talk to you later.